Thank you.
I gotta
So here we are. I feel like it's been a while since the Instructional Policy Committee, we met as a whole. Obviously we've been seeing each other a lot for the reopening type plans and the retreat for the 10 hours with the retreat, which covered a lot of topics, many of those that we normally talk about in instructional policy. I pulled a few things from the agenda for Monday that just to kind of highlight and showcase that is in the agenda and board docs, and then some updates. But the most important topic is under the other agenda items, is for us to talk about kind of the status of we call them our guidance documents for reopening. And I need to talk through with you kind of the status of those. I'll show you a spreadsheet where we've coded like a guidance document on how we're going to take attendance, for example, and grading and things like that, that we'll need to bring to the board a few of those because they do have a modification of the board policy a little bit, some adjustments. So I think it's important for us to talk about those today because we could, if we get them finished and done and the superintendent signed off, we can actually bring them as early as Monday as part of kind of a package of guidance documents. So that'll be the most important thing for us to talk about. Do you have any other agenda items that we just want to make sure we save time for today?
I don't
think so.
Okay. I pulled in the board docs on the consent agenda, business affairs. I pulled just a couple things that for a grant from Summit Education Initiative, just a continued kind of support from them on some of our middle school and high school work that we do with them and some of the data analysis work that they do. We do have 2 textbook adoptions that are very small. They're just pathway adoptions on the biotech anatomy and physiology.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, that where we are with this is this will go to board. This is where this meeting on Monday will be where we announce our intent to adopt these. And then the materials will send everyone just a little 2-minute voiceover PowerPoint that kind of explains the materials. And then if anybody wants to come into 10 North Main in the board office, we'll lay the materials there if anybody wants to come in. But I'm sure this is such a small adoption because it's just a part of the biotech pathway teaching tool. It's not something that we're doing all across the district. Then we also have the dance pathway, that there are materials for that. And the same thing, we'll go ahead and announce it at Monday's meeting. And then at the next board meeting, 2 weeks later, we'll adopt it. So folks will have 2 weeks. And same thing, we'll do a little voiceover PowerPoint just to kind of explain the materials. I think that as long as you're comfortable with that, I feel like that's worked well instead of us, sometimes especially on the bigger adoptions, we like the show and tell with the kids and the members of the faculty who are part of the adoption and let you guys really interact with the materials. But in this virtual world, it seems like just a voiceover PowerPoint or a little video would probably suffice.
Sure. Is that biotech anatomy and physiology? Is that for the one at North, or which one is that for?
This is the one for North.
Okay.
I don't believe they're using these materials anywhere else, but I can double check before Monday.
A biotechnical, that might also, it could maybe go with exercise phys.
Yeah, over at Bookville.
Yeah, maybe. Sounds like
Yeah.
something my kids had in college. So, yeesh.
Right, right.
That's what I was gonna say. I love how smart kids are these days because those seem to be college level courses in high school now. So that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And then under business affairs, there were two items I just wanted to draw your attention to. The first one is this is a continuation service agreement with the National New Tech Network. And that covers 6 through 12. So their continued professional development and coaching for new tech, especially now the middle school is getting the more intensive coaching on project-based learning and using, they have a system called Echo where they actually measure more of the soft skills the kids need and the problem solving. But they have a tech digital tool to be able to do that where they put their lessons and then they align so that they can actually measure kids' growth in these other areas besides just academic skills. So all of that, the contract to continue the high school work and then to do deeper work with the middle school is included in this contract. And then the hand to mind is, it came out of our reopening and recovery small group meetings that our elementary teachers were really concerned that our digital tools are fabulous. They have all sorts of ways to manipulate on the screen to have like digital manipulatives, but they still feel like in this virtual world, it's not quite the same as when you're in the classroom and you can hold stuff to learn place value and to learn even for the youngest grades, just some basic counting and things like that. So Karen Gijic had a team come together to look at materials for manipulatives that we could purchase and send home to students in K-5. And they found this Hand to Mind company when they looked at different companies and found this one to have the best manipulative. So we're going to order those. We're using, you notice some of the COVID funds, the relief funds for this to be able to get the manipulatives at home. And then the teachers will incorporate those into their lessons, which I'm pretty excited about. It's very cool.
It's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, the more we can do that. We did some of that in the spring. The teachers were like, we've got to get, art materials and supplies. And we had gazillion people in the warehouse putting together these kits. And we did a few different rounds of some kind of hands-on materials for the youngest students. So I'm glad they talked about doing this earlier so that we can purchase them and then get them out right at the beginning of school, which will be great.
Ellen, speaking of that, just can I throw out there, when I did that, the cards for the seniors in the spring, I had quite a few schools that were participants in one way or another, a lot digitally from us. But if we're laying that out and there's a way to do more of that in the fall, I would love to help be a conduit. I've got all the outreach. I worked with, oh my gosh, it just flew out of my head. Michelle. No, for our partner, Michelle from outside agency. I'm trying to think whose it was. Not SEI. It'll come.
Connexus.
Yes. I'm like,
Michelle Collins.
Yes. Michelle helped me to get in touch with all of the nursing home partners. So I've got all that information that she did the research on. And if we wanted to connect seniors and students, I would be happy to help with that. So if you want to throw that out there, since we're delivering kits, right? Because that was the big holdup last time was we're doing it from, May through June. That was not a great time to try to get stuff out.
Right.
So,
right.
Just throwing that out there because I would love to, be able to help with that in any way.
Okay, that's great.
I've got a lot of people who would love to have pen pal. A lot of senior centers that would love to have pen pals.
Yeah, I know a lot of our teachers would be interested in something like that. And we're still doing, we're actually going to be bringing, I don't think it went last board meeting, but artificial intelligence software to be able to score writing prompts, so that will help. We've been looking at them and they get better and better. And now we feel like we're at a place that the software really is appropriate, kind of across grade levels now. And so that will enable us to do, the turnaround of doing writing prompts and not having that huge weight on like our English teachers who grade, 150 papers, all of that if we can have this, especially in this virtual environment, kids could write and then the software automatically, checks it and scores it or grades it if you want to do that, or just gives feedback. Karen said it's amazing what the software is able to do now. So writing is going to be, even more so a focus for us. So any kind of real life application for that and pen pals and things like that would be wonderful.
The other thing I threw out on that APS United page, and I had a lot of great feedback from, was maybe, a lot of people who are seniors, we forget this, right? We still think the Frank Sinatra generation. This is not the Frank Sinatra generation that's in the nursing homes now, right? This is the civil rights era generation, a lot of them. And a lot of them were part of the social justice in the 60s, and would love to share what it was like for them, and maybe, draw some comparisons and, do some virtuals. I've got the county's working on putting digital in. I just had a conversation with Deb Folk because she is the be all end all on that stuff. So they're trying to put more digitals in the hands of seniors, so we can then have some of those conversations about, maybe it's about voting, maybe it's about the civil rights movement. So anyway, just some thoughts.
That would be very, very cool.
Yeah. And I would love to help. I mean, that's what I'm there for.
Technology, that would be really neat to be able to make that connection.
Well, that's what I'm there for. So don't forget.
Okay. For sure. Okay, I'm going to cast for a second here. I'll skip down to the College and Career Academy update that's here, and you can take a look at these. I wanted to just highlight for you that as we've moved the middle school transformation approval process, as we talked at the retreat, where in October we'll be coming, and this will all come through us in the Instructional Policy Committee. We'll figure out in October how to engage the board and make sure they either, if we do a little mini retreat or if we do it at a board meeting, to start to inform them of all the addendum to the master plan. And then in November, we'll be looking for formal approval. And we have that, we've kind of mapped out those dates with David. But in the meantime, we still are moving forward on kind of deepening the training, since we've got the same amount of time and even a little more time at the beginning of the year as teachers are planning all their remote instruction, that we had already planned for the high school this integrated teaching and learning, which is taking a deeper dive into how do you take, and we've done a year's worth of training, but this is kind of it's beyond just the introductory stuff. Now we're going deep and teachers will be planning lessons together. So if you are in a automotive pathway, how does the English teacher and math teacher work collaboratively with the automotive teacher to integrate the content into that area? Or if you're in nursing, how do you do that? And this training will be happening in August, but then we're building in planning time for the teachers to work collaboratively and create units and then share them across different academies and give feedback to each other, so that we can really keep pushing this integrated teaching and learning. Integrated meaning across. It doesn't have to be just career with academic. It could also be that the math teacher and the social studies teacher do some projects together where they integrate the standards between their two classes to have common lessons together. And then I wanted to show you these cool visuals from East. East is the next school that we did all the signage for the academies. Doesn't that look fabulous? Can you see those okay?
Beautiful.
Make this bigger for you.
Right.
Yeah, I just love them.
Oh, they're beautiful.
It makes a huge difference to really brand then, you know, each academy. So it's the business and health and then applied tech. Isn't that great?
Yes, those are wonderful.
Yeah, I think those came out really, really nice. And we're making our way through, you know, all the different high schools to have that kind of branding. And then the last thing, and you'll have to just check this out on your own, but they're wonderful. They're doing feature videos of every pathway. They've been working on this since last spring and all summer, that every single pathway is going to have these kind of promotional videos to use with middle school students. And it can be ninth grade, but mostly for middle school, to start to really introduce them in a deeper way. And knowing that we weren't going to be able to bring the eighth graders to visit all, you know, the different pathways that we normally do in the spring, they decided to do the videos. And then the more they were doing it, it's like, this is great anyway, because there's so many different uses, because the kids can't get to every single pathway, obviously, but they'll be used then throughout the year for the middle schoolers to really introduce them as they're making decisions about high school. But they're really, really cool. You got to check you'll have to watch these at your leisure, but they're pretty wonderful. Okay, and then the I Promise School, I think you are aware of all the updates on here, but I still wanted to show you the virtual professional development that they've been doing since teaching. Promise Village. Their update is they have 3 families that moved in so far, which is great. And they also are going to have a University of Akron student there helping with some of the academic support for students, which is really cool. That was an add-on as they were talking about it. And then the I Promise book, I think you've seen all the, marketing materials that came out about that.
I have my own copy of that.
Do you? I have no idea how he does and they do all that they do. It's just amazing.
It's so wonderful. It's really, it's very good. I'll just say it's very good.
Yeah, and just the whole content of the book is so cool. And then they won the best short form series for the 2020 AFCEA TV honors. So it's some other honor that they received. So pretty cool. So there's always something, as you know, happening from the I Promise School and the LeBron James Family Foundation in general. So that gets us to, do you have any questions just about agenda items or about those updates before I dive into the connected learning and the guidance documents?
No, I don't think so. Thanks for sharing those videos, though. That'll be great.
Yeah. I'll have to ask Rachel when, what the deadline is for kind of the whole suite and how they're going to house them on the web, because I'm sure you'll love, as they get done, to kind of look around and see. They're all very unique depending on the instructor and the students. It's kind of fun as they came together. So, here's I'm going to zoom out just for a second so you can see this. This is, we use this project management kind of system where this this is how we track progress on a lot of our projects. There's about 8 columns that I've hid right now just for you to see that are even go further in terms of when things are due and how we get approval. I put on here just so you could see it. These guidance documents, what we did last spring is as soon as we went into remote learning in March, we knew that there were going to be quite a few things that needed adjusted and changed in our current procedures in the district. And so through your action back in March, or it might have even been like the end of February, beginning of March, like as soon as things started to really fall apart in March, you all passed a board resolution that said, it was kind of an emergency board resolution that OSBA put out there for all the districts to say, you know, you have to quickly kind of grant the superintendent that they can make some quick adjustments because this was all happening so fast. And one of those was making adjustments in terms of attendance and any grading practices and transportation and things like that that were needed to make that quick shift to remote learning. And so what we ended up with was about 30 some, I think it turned out to be 32, 33 guidance documents that were posted in our teacher toolkit that kind of informed all of the faculty and staff, like, here's how we're handling. One was on enrollment. So all of a sudden, you know, normally parents come to the school and they enroll kids. So all of a sudden we're remote. How are we going to do enrollment? And how are we going to step through that? So it's just procedure documents. And I'll show you an example, the enrollment one that I just told you about. And you'll, Mrs. Mansfield, you'll recognize these because I went through these with you last spring. And Ms. McKittrick, you were on instructional policy last spring, right? Through this madness too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So both of you probably will recognize what this looks like. This is one from last spring. And the way these are laid out is the topic is across the top, you know, enrollment, and then it has who's the lead staff, if staff have any questions. Right. And then it has ODE guidance on this topic. Since everything was coming out so quickly in the spring, we would just load any guidance that the Department of Ed had provided on this topic. And then here's our APS procedures. And it basically captured, you know, how are we going to be in this new environment? You know, how are we going to handle? And for enrollment, it really forced us to make sure that everything was online, although we did enable families to continue to come into the engagement center. So all of that is outlined here. And then at the bottom, there's a question and answer. And so all of these were loaded into the faculty toolkit where everything is in terms of our expectations during this COVID time period. And the faculty toolkit, just as a reminder, is when you go to our website, it's right on the front of the website. It's password protected because it's just for staff, but you have access to it that you can click and go in there. And that's where I have me and my staff have everything about, so what are all the digital resources for English and for math, and what are the expectations for schedules and professional learning communities and all of that. It's all housed in one place, which is our hub. It's our intranet that we have. So now here we are, we have this column G is all of the guidance documents that we ended last spring when we were under the emergency COVID, which what we call the emergency remote learning, where you had to, you know, quickly shift over. And then column H is the kind of the documents that we're working through right now to flip them to now for this next school year. Are we making any modifications from the emergency remote? And if so, what kind of changes? And then we'll post all of these guidance documents in the teacher toolkit and we'll start to do PD and training for the teachers and principals on all of these. Almost every single one is collaboratively done either through one of our reopening teams or it's a part of a regular team. Like we have a student behavior advisory team that looks at some of our alternative programs. So they'll be a part of finalizing the alternative guidance document. The color coding right now, what this represents in this column H is the yellow ones are ones that we're still working through. The green ones are done and the red ones, I haven't started to review them yet. So it kind of shows the status, but most of them are green and ready to be posted and go. Then for you all, the most important thing is this column N and O, mostly column N, which shows which of these guidance documents impact board policy. So when you look at the current board policy, in the spring, we sort of had that emergency superintendent resolution, like go do what you need to do to quickly flip the district. But now, because we've got more time, the ones that are marked with a yes, that it actually is making an adjustment in a board policy, we would like to bring these to the board. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 of them that actually would need to modify, just temporarily this year, modify our board policy. So it's attendance. Obviously, we're going to be doing attendance differently. Graduation, the guidance document actually isn't different because we're not doing anything different during COVID, but we haven't passed the graduation resolution yet with all the changes that happened. So we need to do that anyway. That's why I coded it that we might as well make sure that we get everything signed, sealed, and delivered for the last changes that came from the state and do it all at the same time. And then OTES 2.0 is the same thing. We're moving into a new OTES, so our board policy has to change to reflect that. So those are the 3 that are, pretty substantial. The 3rd grade guarantee we might need to bring, depending on the state guidance on that that's coming out this week. And then everything else are just procedural things that don't really impact board policy. So just questions about that before we talk about, I just need feedback from you and kind of a process piece to talk through how do we want to do this. And we can look at like the attendance and the graduation one, for example. What's the best way for us as a committee to bring this? It's not a total like policy. We're not asking for a new policy. We're just saying temporarily during this year or however long we're in remote, we need this adjustment. So do you have any questions? And then we can talk about the process.
I do have a question. Can you provide documents that would show the current policy with the changes that are going to be made so that we can compare the two? Because I'm sure the rest of the board would want to see that as well. So here's the policy that's in place. Here's the change that we want to make for this year.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I don't know if it would, are you saying like put it on like we normally do when we make revisions where you put it right on the document with strikeout and additions so that they see the changes?
Maybe not even to that extent, just say.
Even side by side?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we could do that for sure.
I like the red line version, but if that's not an easy thing to show, I would, a side by side, I think we can handle.
Yeah, the way, I'd have to think about whether it's a little bit.
Is that too
I guess,
cumbersome?
Well, I hadn't thought about kind of processing it that way because the way these are written are like instructional to the faculty,
Yeah.
so they're not really written as a board policy at all. They're like, it talks about the ODE restart guidance. It kind of gives the rationale of here's what the guidance is, here's how we're going to do the procedures. It's more narrative instructional for teachers.
Then
So
what if you could just give us a very quick overview of what the changes involve, that instead of having this, we're going to do this, maybe something along those lines, instead of not necessarily a side-by-side comparison, but just attendance this year, the changes will be. Would that be an easier way to manage it, do you think? Because I don't want I don't want it to be too cumbersome, like I said, but just a really quick way for us to look and see what the changes are going to entail.
Yeah.
I can see by looking at what you've got on the screen right now, right? I mean, verification of attendance when we're in school is really easy. I see you, you're there, you say, I'm here, and raise your hand. But there are
body in a seat, right?
Right. Someone's behind is in that seat. But there are like 5 different ways to verify attendance right there. So that's a totally different. This is a virtual world versus bottoms in seats.
Right.
Exactly. I might, as you were talking, I was thinking, maybe it is better, and I can kind of talk through this with Karen Gijic. She and I are always the ones who do all the revisions to board policies. Maybe it might be easier for us to take the board policy, like you said, make the changes there that are kind of the high level board policy, like, that we're going to use 5 different methods and put that in there. We might be able to do that. So then we're just approving like a 1-year temporary, or the resolution would say, well, anytime we're in remote learning, or if a student is in remote learning, here's how the attendance is taken. Instead of, we could provide this as a supporting document that has more narrative, but maybe it is better just to pull out what would actually go, how we would revise the policy.
Yeah. And I think that the board, from what I heard, gosh, we met so many times last week. I don't remember what day was what. So I feel like was like a lot of my week. So I know we talked a little bit about, what if they can't log on right at the right time? And it seems like what I'm seeing there covers a lot of that. So I think that, I'm excited to see that, right? That yes, it's supposed to be during class time, but if that's not possible, this, and this still qualify as attendance. That's that's very, that's comforting from what we were talking about the other day, whichever day it was.
Right. Yeah, we tried to capture, I think the way that this is coming together, I think it's going to meet everything that we talked about at the retreat, that even at the beginning of this, we say, for the maximum benefit of direct instruction from our faculty and interaction with their classmates, our top priority is to work with families to arrange their child's schedule to match our recommended student schedules. But our goal is to have the vast majority of our students engaging in their lessons during the school day. But due to the complexity of our families' lives and the various family work and childcare schedules, it may be impossible for some students to connect into their instruction during the school day. And they may need to watch taped or posted lessons and complete assignments in the evenings and on weekends. And then, we have to have attendance procedures that capture that as well. So
ODE lets us do that. So that still qualifies under.
Yes, what ODE put out, this is what ODE put out, is there's, 3 ways to capture attendance: daily interactions, assignment completion, or digital logins to learning management systems. That's straight from ODE.
Okay, so I was afraid that they were going to say, the one thing I'm concerned about is I know I heard Mr. Rambler talking about, or I've talked with Mr. Rambler about, again, it's all starting to blend together.
Right.
Because I saw him last week too. I actually physically was in the I was in the building, so it gets weird. But with the state law, for, is it Ariana DeFries? Is that the law it was for? That when she disappeared, so
Right.
check-ins are important. So is that being waived for online learning, or how are we complying with that?
It's really, it's like, I think our philosophy is we don't want to waive that,
Okay.
to be monitoring the safety of the kids. So that's why we just talked today that we may have families actually indicate whether their kids are going to be, more live time during the school day, and the expectation is we should see them during check-in. And so their
Okay.
attendance would be around that. They'll still be able to take advantage of these different methods, but here's that families would say, yeah, my kid is going to be available during the school day. Or a family would say, because of our family schedule, they're not going to be able to be there. So don't send all calls to me saying my kid was absent today because they didn't check in or they didn't go on digitally online, because they're not going to be able to do it till I get home from work, in the evening. So then we at least would know that for safety purposes, and for communication to the families, rather than just assuming that if we don't see the kids that they're going to be doing it, later or the next day or on the weekends or whatever. So
What about the kids? I think we talked about this at the retreat, who don't necessarily want to have their cameras on, so you might not physically see them, but they would be able to respond.
right. That's these, methods of check-in where it can be physical verification, like they attend a Google Meets, for example, or
Okay.
they check in on an individual session with the teachers. I mean, there's different ways to
Okay.
physically verify, but then it could be just completing a Google form question at the beginning of class or sometime during the morning, where that gets posted in the Google Classroom. So it's more of a check-in that they've engaged with you as a faculty member.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Or completing an assignment, or answering some other, engaging with materials that they've posted in the Google Classroom, or contributing to an online, digital discussion forum. So there's different ways, and I even put in here, when kids walk into a brick and mortar school, there could be a kid that walks into a classroom and promptly falls asleep and doesn't do any work, but we still mark them attending. So attending versus completing assignments and the grading and like actively doing everything you're supposed to do, that's a whole different thing. That's where the grades and progress comes in. Attendance really is just, are they engaged and connected somehow in this remote way? And there's 5 different ways that can come and be checked that they're engaged. And then you've got the whole other layer of, are they doing their assignments? Are they, connecting in a way that the teacher is evaluating them and communicating to the parents, here's how they're participating in class and here's how their grade is. That's a whole separate thing. And that's probably what the family will give them the most information. So at least that's where we're talking today.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. The other, the graduation one is, if you think back, it feels like it was a year ago when when you received the graduation presentation, and kind of the deeper dive from Mark on the new graduation requirements. If you remember this document, here's the new, how that you can be ready, the different options now that now go into effect. So these options that we went through, I think we were on the second floor of 10 North Main when we kind of took a deeper dive into these.
I do remember these.
Do you? Yeah.
Sure do.
That looks familiar, right?
Yeah.
And then here's the readiness seals that are available.
Yes.
So that all, basically this guidance document says, this now goes into effect that we have the class of 21 and 22, and then it's a little different for the class of 23 and beyond, but this all goes into effect. So this isn't unique because we're in a remote environment. It's really just kind of alerting everybody that the state didn't waive anything. They didn't put anything off in terms of these new requirements. This all is into place now. And we've got to, move forward with these graduation requirements. So I'll talk to Mark, but I'm hoping that the next, either this board meeting or the next one, we officially kind of make sure that we get the board policy, signed, sealed, and delivered with any final, our regular board policy, because there's really nothing different in this guidance document, to make sure we get that all done. And then the last one, the third grade guarantee is a potential, this one isn't updated yet, but the state, actually there was a webinar today that some of my staff participated in to hear the guidance from the state on how they're going to handle the third grade guarantee, and whether that is going to be waived or whether that's going to move forward depending on how they're thinking about the testing. I'm not sure. So I'll let you know, but I doubt we'll be ready on Monday for that. And it's not a huge rush. We can wait another board meeting to provide that guidance, since that's something that's it happens all year for the third grade guarantee. And then the last one is OTES 2.0. That again, same kind of thing. We have to bring you the whole board policy. That's a regular board policy change that we'll have to bring through the board policy committee, because we're shifting to OTES 1.0 to OTES 2.0. So there are adjustments that are going to have to be made. And we have that on the board. Let me see what this is do you also remember this fine document? We are required, this is the timeline to bring everything to the board. Do you remember this?
Ages back, yes.
Yeah. I've shown this to Mr. Bravo now, and he just loves this. We had just used this in instructional policy, and then I showed it to him before I went out on my medical leave, and he was like, oh, this is so helpful. But we had originally planned that, this last board meeting, we would have started the process for OTES 2.0. It hasn't moved forward on finalizing some things with Pat Scheib that we need to take care of first, and then we'll bring that. So we'll have to adjust this new timeline, but we have to get it done by some, starter kind of policy by September 1st. So right. We will, then some of the procedural, the guideline kind of things we can keep working on. So we're going to have to bring it, and that's a state template, OTES 2.0 kind of board policy. So it should be pretty simple. And that comes from HR. So I'll check with them to make sure we're good to go with that. And that is it in terms of all the rest of the documents. Once they get posted, I can just send an email to the board to say, if you want to look at everything else on professional learning communities and SIP and things like that didn't change any board policy, it'll all be in the teacher toolkit that you all can take a look at.
Great.
We're starting to populate it tomorrow with what we have done. So that's where we are. So process-wise, I'll find out about a timeline for the anything else we have to do for graduation and the OTES. And that may need to just go through our regular board policy team. But then the attendance, for example, should we just do that during instructional policy committee as or what do you think? Since it's sort of it's coming from us as an adjustment, but it impacts the board policy. It's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Do you mean give a quick presentation at the board meeting? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Are you concerned that maybe that the policy committee would want to have it as well? Is that what you're concerned, that they're going to feel like, I mean, we do have policy in our name as well, but I mean.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I don't view this as a board policy change. You know, this is a temporary thing. It could just be for the 9 weeks on how we're doing. It may be that this has to continue for anybody in remote, but we're not changing, because I don't want to have to go back in 9 weeks if we go back to school and then have to go back through a 3-meeting board policy, you know, to put it all back in place. So it doesn't really feel like this official board policy thing. It just feels like, hey, during this time, this is how we have to take attendance.
So you don't think that we need to have 3 readings or waive 3 readings or anything like that because it's not official policy?
What if it becomes official policy? For example, what if at some point when we're back in person, we have a calamity day, and instead of just having the day off, they just carry on as normal, but these things would be in place in that circumstance.
We do already have that covered in our, we used to call it our blizzard bag, you know, blizzard procedures. We do have provision that the board has passed that says that we can use remote learning during that time. We take attendance for our APS online kids. We take attendance very differently because the state has different rules for the, you know, fully online kind of kids that are they're not connected with their teachers during the day. There's software that tracks all that. So our APS online program has a different way that they do it. And so for long term, you know, we would have all of our kids who want online in another year, they would just fall under those procedures that this really is just a temporary remote type thing. I think we could, and I'll work with Ryan and Diana Feidel on this, but I think we could write the resolution that just says, this is temporarily how we're going to do attendance. The board policy for attendance still stands, but we're just going to sort of hold it in abeyance while we do this procedure during this COVID remote. I think that's how we could handle it.
That makes sense.
Let me try to sort through that tomorrow, and maybe I could just email you. And then we could figure out, based on that answer, we could figure out how we bring it forward on Monday.
Okay.
And if we need to waive anything, you know, for 3 readings, if it's going to follow that procedure, or whether we'll do it similar to how we did it in the spring as just a separate resolution.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And maybe they can give that guidance on what's necessary, because I think it makes more sense to me as a resolution, but I'm not the lawyer.
Right. Yeah, we'll let them
the lawyers figure it out.
Sounds good. Well, that's all I had. If there's any other questions, or it's my mother's 92nd birthday today.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
It's kind of fun.
That is.
Isn't that amazing? What a blessing. So Miss McKittrick, when you were talking about your father, that's kind of fun. We're at the same place in our lives right now.
Yeah. It's good stuff though. So good.
Yeah, what a blessing.
Yeah, it is.
Are you going to do something special?
we're having, we have a village, and Mrs. Mansfield, number of the people who are a part of the village who are very, they're kind of extended family. So we're having some of them tonight. And then on this Friday, my brothers are coming, and my kids will be here. So we're having close family, but each one is under 10 people. We're being very careful, obviously. But it'll be nice. She'll be so thrilled to have a family.
Perfect weather. It's perfect out. It's not too hot. It's perfect.
Yeah.
That's good.
That'd be
Good.
great. Thank you.
Well, enjoy.
All right. Well, you all take care, and I'll expect some communication from me tomorrow on where we head with these guidance documents.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you
All right.
so much.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Ryan.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
night, everyone.
All right.
Night.